two familiar faces to the HITLAB program. Dr. Glennis Mehra, who's on our Breakthrough Alliance board, is going to be interviewing Jospeh Conrad from the NIH, talking about some important information around NIH funding, which I think is going to be very, very relevant to a lot of the founders that are on the program today. But Glennis, over to you.
Hello, everybody. Thanks for joining today. Happy to be here. And thanks again to the HITLAB team for having us. It is my absolute pleasure to be interviewing Jospeh, a stalwart supporter of our ecosystem and also dynamic director and educator from my perspective at the NIH National Cancer Institute. So with that, I'd like to hit it off. I know time is of essence. So Jospeh, can you describe your role at NIH and how it relates particularly to most of the audience in helping early stage companies?
Sure. So my role at the NIH is primarily to provide outreach and awareness that a company or multiple companies, any company really, can come to the NIH, license our technology that's developed on in the labs on our campus, and start businesses around. Okay, so also these same companies can collaborate with our investigators to co-develop technology, whether it be our technology or their technology. And also some companies, particularly new startups and the like, are not aware that they can have their technologies validated in a clinical setting. If that's something they are trying to do, we can help them with that as well. So primarily, we just want to create awareness that NIH is here to actually help facilitate companies' growth and development of economic development, promote economic development through the ecosystem.
Yeah. And so I know a lot of people are very familiar with what we refer to as the extramural programs, the SBIR and STTR funding arrangements. So can you talk about how this is particularly different, your intramural programs, and what are the advantages of going the route of utilizing NIH resources from an intramural perspective versus an extramural perspective?
Right. So for those who aren't aware, NIH is pretty much divided into two sections. The first section is the extramural program, which is what people are mostly aware of, as you mentioned. So this is where you get your SBIR funding, grant funding, R01s, and things like that. So if you are looking for funding from the NIH, you're going to be coming to the extramural program. For the intramural program, which is what I represent, we don't have any money. So people who come to me say, oh, I'm looking for grant funding. It's like, well, we don't have money, but we have technology. And so our role in the intramural program is to move the technology that's created in our labs out to the patients. And the only way that we can do that is through licensing that technology to companies that have the ability to essentially manufacture and commercialize it and get it to patients. And so that's the primary role of the intramural program, which I represent.
Yeah. And I think in our prep call, what was most intriguing to me is the value of that. So generally, early stage founders are very much focused on raising capital, but a lot of people are not looking at the valuation aspect of things and also the commercialization aspects. And so it seems like what you're doing is occupying that commercial phase of early stage development. Can you talk about the idea of collaboration as indirect funding?
Sure. So what we do is it's more of a supportive role. When a company will collaborate with us, let's say, for example, we're doing a clinical trial together, okay? The company will come in with some aspect of financial support for a clinical trial. Right. So they may have to hire a nurse or they may have to provide the study drug. So they'll end up paying for that. But if as the trial goes on, the NIH will cover the cost of the trial if it's done in our clinical center. So we have the largest clinical center in the world. At any given time, we're doing over 1,000 clinical studies at any one time. And so, but that's completely funded by the federal government, the NIH. So, if it's just throwing a number out there, if it's $1 million, if it costs $1 million to run the trial, that's $1 million that the company won't have to spend or consider in their burn rate, right? So we're actually saving the company money by conducting the trial, and that's a collaboration on the clinical trial side, right? If you're going to collaborate with us to co-develop technology, similarly, there is some aspect of that engagement that the company won't have to pay for, right? So for a cooperative research and development agreement type of relationship where the company comes in with their know-how, we come in with our know-how, we put the two know-hows together and create something new. We both jointly own the technology, and the company licenses our ownership rights in the technology to go out and commercialize it. Certain aspects of that relationship are also, covered in terms of what they bring and what we bring. So there's some aspect of that relationship that the company doesn't have to worry about.
Yeah, and I think, just from my perspective, managing a community of founders, what I see is that quite often the ability to remove something off of your balance sheet is sometimes more significant than adding capital to it.
Right.
That's something that I think, thank you for introducing, because in terms of my imagination and my engagement with the NIH, it's usually not on that front. And I imagine that's the case for many other people. Now, specifically around, so you've got the collaboration, you've got the licensing. Now, specifically about the licensing, that's a bit more interesting because the direct path to adding value or for adding funds to a company isn't as clear. And so can you describe, first of all, how does someone go about finding innovation to license from the NIH? And what's the particular value for a company? Why do that? Why go through that headache when you've got so many other things going on when you're starting a company?
Okay, so the best way to find the technology is we have a website. So that's the first thing. So for those who have a pen and pad or recording this, you can go to techtransfer.nih.gov. And that website is the technology transfer site for the entirety of NIH. And so you can find technologies. If you scroll all the way down to the bottom, you'll be able to find technologies that are available for licensing. And in that, there are, included in that listing, obviously we're going to have therapeutics, but we also have digital health, software, and diagnostic devices. And so you can peruse those. And if you find something on that list, it's just a matter of contacting the individual who's listed as the contact person for that technology and saying, hey, I saw this technology, I'd like to license it. And then you'll have a conversation about the licensing agreement. And if you're interested in dealing with the licensing agreement, you can negotiate that with the specialist who is overseeing that specific technology. It's just that simple. So it's like shopping for things on Amazon. So what we say is, we're like Amazon, but we don't have next day delivery. So it's easy to find the technologies and actually engage with the individual. So why would you want to come to NIH for technology? Well, traditionally, I think most people are used to going to universities to source technologies, right? If you go to a university, they have great technology. I'm not disparaging universities in any way. They just have a different business model, right? So universities, by and large, are profit centers. Okay, so if you are going to license a technology from a university, the university will more than likely take a degree of equity in your company, right? And so that is one issue. You're giving up equity right away. Also, if you are paying a royalty back for the license, the royalty is going to be the fee for the royalty will be, I don't want to say excessive, but let's just say the exclusivity that you can get from a university is proportionate to how much you actually would be willing to pay for that exclusivity. Okay. And thirdly, if you collaborate with a university, they have overhead, right? So if you put in $4 into a collaboration, 3 of those dollars are going to go to the university to keep the lights on, pay the staff, and keep the stadium running, right? So you contrast that to working with the NIH. As far as the NIH is concerned, we don't take equity in your company if you license a technology from us. Okay, so that's the first thing. Also, the second is the royalty rates that we charge for our licenses are only designed to get a fair return on the public dollar that created the technology. So we're not out to make money on the license. We just want to make sure that we get a fair return on the license. So, and the reason for that is, the technology has already been paid for by the taxpayer, right? So there's no reason for us to upsell the, for lack of a better phrase, but, put a premium on the license. Okay. And then lastly, we don't have any overhead, again, because the taxpayer has paid for the technology. So if you put, $4 into a collaboration with us, $4 are going to go directly to the collaboration. Now, one institute at the NIH does have overhead, but it's capped at 15%. And so that is, the gist of working with us over working with the university. Now, I'm not saying don't go to a university, but what I do like to say is if you're going to go shop at a university for technology, where universities have great technology, let's just make that clear. Put us on your list, because you might find something with us that you might not find at the university. And if you find something, our business model is going to be more business friendly to your interest.
Yeah. And I imagine that goes towards the mission that NIH has and that reflects in probably taking on more risk and more towards angle of public health and underrepresented issues in our healthcare system.
Well, we have a preference for small business, right? So that's a major function for our development of this technology. We want to make sure that we're supporting small businesses, and by doing that, we are promoting economic development, right? So some companies ask, well, how, if I'm competing against big pharma, how do I win, right? So the scenario we give is that if a small company is interested in the technology and a large pharma is interested in the technology, but the small company has the ability to bring that technology to market, then the technology will more than likely go to the small business if they can prove that they have the ability to do that, because by doing that, the small business is going to end up, hiring more employees, renting out lab space, paying lease on a lab location, et cetera. So it's adding to the economic development cycle to keep people employed and have families do what they do, because somebody's getting a paycheck. The large pharma, they don't necessarily, I don't want to say they don't need it, but I think small businesses need it more.
Yeah, and that's really commendable. And we've seen the economic impact of federal support in academic research and also at the early stage here in New York, at least. And so what I imagine is that if you're targeting early stage companies, there's different levels of expertise, experience. I'm assuming quite a lot of people who are an audience member here, maybe first-time founders. So what are the basic requirements to be considered? I assume that you can't just cook out an idea in your kitchen sink and then go to the NIH and say, okay, I want a license.
Yeah, I mean, if you're in your living room and it's like you've had this flash of genius and it's like, hey, I got this great idea, what you're going to actually need to be able to establish is that you have the capabilities, the team, the funding, the ability to take this technology, get it commercialized, manufactured, and then get it to the patient populations that's there. If you can establish that, then by all means, you're likely to be able to be successful with a license or a collaboration.
Yeah. And is there any special consideration of for this then translating into an SBIR?
Well, I know that you can take a licensed technology that you get from the intramural program and then take it to an SBIR program, right? So if you look at it from the perspective of, the company in licenses a technology because they want to add it to their pipeline, or they want to start their company with this technology, the next phase is funding, right? So
Yeah.
basically what you end up getting with a license is the exclusive right to manufacture, market, and sell that. And you can take that to, an SBIR or raise additional funds outside of the SBIR programs. But there's no preclusion for, doing that in that regard.
Yeah. So I think just keeping the audience in mind, what are some examples of technologies available or even success stories that you have?
We've got hundreds of technologies. If you go to the website, you'll see hundreds of technologies. So I can't really focus on any one specific. But we did do a webinar on a specific women's health technology. It was a wearable monitor for monitoring pregnancy, health, and progress. This device actually combines the technology from two separate monitoring devices. I think one is called a cardiotachograph or CTG monitor. I think that monitors placenta health on the mother. And then there's also a device called a Toco, I think it's called a Toco dynamometer. And that particular device monitors the baby's vitals. So we developed a technology that combines both of these into one device, and it's a wearable device for that the mother can wear in the privacy of her home and access the information from her phone and send that information to the physician. But we have a lot of technology, software-based, app-based, and wearable-based technologies that the companies can peruse. As far as a success story, one of the digital health technologies wasn't necessarily women's health focused, but we partnered an entrepreneur with the National Institute of Diabetes and Kidney Diseases. This particular investigator was looking at the effects of the diabetes drug on sleep, and this particular entrepreneur company developed a wearable sleep device. So if you know of people who have gone to a sleep center for something like sleep apnea or whatnot, it's not a very pleasant experience. And so what he did is created a device that a patient would wear around their waist in the privacy of their own home, and it captured the same type of data that you would get at a sleep center. So this particular investigator at the NIH had a protocol where his patients had to go to a sleep center. After that first experience, they didn't want to go back. And so the study was in jeopardy of being canceled until we introduced this individual to this investigator. And the company was able to provide 10 of these devices to the investigator for the study. The patients took it, wore it in their homes without any problems. The data that they received was fantastic, and the study went off extremely well. The investigator was able to write the paper, and the company was able to say, hey, we validated our technology in an NIH clinical setting. And because of that, they were able to go off and raise, capital on that. And this company now is doing extremely well in terms of, the amount of capital that they've raised. They've actually taken that wearable device that goes around your chest and reduced it down to a wearable ring. And some other aspects. They have contracts with the Veterans Affairs and also Department of Transportation. Anywhere that sleep is, key to, the business model, they are doing extremely well. And, a lot of that benefit came from the fact that they were able to validate their technology in a clinical setting at the NIH.
Oh, that's amazing.
Oh, that's wonderful,
yeah.
Joe. Glennis, really, really amazing conversation with Joe. We could definitely listen to you guys all morning and especially get some more advice from Joe about all the amazing resources that the NIH have. We did make sure that we put that link in the chat for you, Joe, that you mentioned around the tech transfer piece. And
Okay.
it's amazing interview. Thanks so much for talking with Joe around all those bits of information that are going to be really useful to the audience today. But it's always a pleasure to have you both on the program.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. Glennis, thank you as well.
Oh, you're welcome. And thank you again for having us, and looking forward to advancing this conversation further.
All right. Looking forward to it as well. Take care, everybody.
Absolutely. No, thanks so much, guys. And talking about advancing the conversation, do please make sure to connect with both Joe from the NIH and Glennis from Biolabs, two amazing individuals and organizations that are supporting the ecosystem right now.